right, well, it's been well reported that presidential advisor Kellyanne Conway and her husband, George, don't share political perspectives. But now a New York Times reporter has escalated a family feud by reposting anti-Trump videos from their 15-year-old daughter without seeking parental permission.
Club Godzilla, I ain't tricking.
That 11-second TikTok video produced by 15-year-old Claudia Conway already has some 1.5 million views. And while the video is alluring, it's the message that's catching people's attention. It reads, "Would be a shame if we all left one-star reviews on all of Trump's restaurants, hotels, and golf courses." Claudia, daughter of Kellyanne and George Conway, is clearly no fan of President Trump.
Believe it or not, you can have your own opinions. Not influenced by your parents at all, simply by educating yourself.
And while the teenage phenom has plenty of followers of her own, she got a boost when New York Times social media reporter Taylor Lorenz recently reposted Conway's anti-Trump TikTok videos to her own Twitter account with some 170,000 followers.
A lot of modern influencers, especially the younger ones, will try to get big on whatever platform they can find.
But now critics are pushing back on Lorenz, saying she amplified a family feud by reposting the videos of a 15-year-old without asking for parental permission, intentionally creating even more friction in the family.
Honey, use your freedom of speech, fine. Daddy just wants you to shut it all down because not everybody's following you as well-meaning.
Okay, Anne.
Hi there.
Stop trying to
support your police. This many people have nothing to do. That is amazing. It's so nice out.
Oh my God! What are you
doing?
Pulling the plug, that's what she's doing, something Taylor Lorenz should have done.
Yeah, I gotta say, Joanne, I found this outrageous. I can't imagine a reporter of her standing taking a child's videos and reposting them. I mean, I see what she did. She was driving the whole thing, but I mean, it was, to me, it's unconscionable. I can't even, of course, here we are repeating this stuff, but it's hard to do media criticism without pointing out what you're talking about. So we use some of the videos ourselves, but I find this, I mean, I find it reprehensible.
You know, it's so crazy today with social media. I tell my kids all the time that everything they put online, whether it's on YouTube or whether it's on Instagram or whether it's on TikTok, everything is public. Anyone can find it at any time for the rest of their lives. That said, I agree that a New York Times reporter should not, without consulting with the family and checking and, sort of checking in and doing the sort of the due diligence that you would do if you were reporting on a child for a story for the New York Times, to just kind of repeat it on Twitter and amplify it. I agree with you, Emily. It takes it too far. You know, there have always been rules unspoken about, how to handle the children of public figures. And if, Sasha and Malia Obama are off limits and Chelsea Clinton was off limits and Barron Trump is off limits, then Kellyanne, whatever's happening in the Conway household that they're doing for any kind of entertainment purposes, their kids should be off limits too.
Yeah, but I think what's different in this case is that the presidential kids and other high-profile families, their children have not been public figures of their own, right? Trying to get a following, trying to be influencers, if you will. And so there is that distinction to be made here, that this is a teenager who is trying to get a big following on social media, sometimes using shock value to get more followers. So, I do understand it from that standpoint. I also do agree that, if you're a reporter and this is the beat that you cover, then you have to, reach out to these young people. You have to make them feel like you're one of them in order for them to give you reality, if you will, as opposed to what their parents are looking over and preventing them from putting out there. So, I get that. On the other hand, it does feel a little creepy because you are talking about you're talking about underage, kids, and it's been brought up. What if this was a male reporter doing something like this? It would even be more shocking, right? So I think, having said all of that, if they're underage kids, even if they're out there publicly, you need to get permission, total clearance from their parents.
I'm with Dan and Joanna. It doesn't really matter if Kellyanne and George Conway's kid wants to have tons of followers on TikTok or Twitter or wherever. Go ahead, let her do it. We can't stop her. We're not acting in loco parentis. But there's no news value as far as I can tell, to the information that Taylor Lorenz provided for us. The Conways apparently have a strained marriage. That's something we've known for a little while, unless they're engaged in an elaborate piece of performance art. And I know you're not supposed to think this way necessarily, but I have a kid who's a little bit younger than the Conway's daughter, and I'm trying to imagine how I would feel if a fellow reporter took something that she put out on social media and blew it up. And I'd be livid, and I think most parents would.
Well, I agree with what everybody else has said. I do want to pick up on what Dan said, which is that Claudia Conway really has made herself a public figure. She's got 21,000 followers on TikTok, and that does become a little bit hard to ignore. But given that the New York Times remains our leading news organization, I do think that they have to think about their standards and whether this is something that they want to amplify. In the end, I agree with all of you that the fact that she is a minor trumps, to coin a phrase, the fact that she's also something of a public figure. This had no business being reported by the Times.
Dan, what about the fact that the Times didn't respond to it? Spectator USA were the only ones who responded, or Joanne going, I mean, nobody was critical. What maybe it's like that was just standard operating procedure.
I feel like it seems like there are sort of different standards for a story that would run in the Times versus amplifying things on your Twitter. Maybe in Taylor Lorenz's mind, I have seen her interviewed saying that in many cases for a feature story, she will go through the parents. Sometimes these kids have managers. She goes through proper channels, but that doesn't stop her then from retweeting on her very, very popular Twitter account, and amplifying in their own right. I mean, there's a distinction that I think shouldn't be there.
Well, Taylor Lorenz been inconsistent.
Period.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have to say I don't follow her with any kind of regularity, so maybe I will.
But Emily, your point is well taken. Only The Spectator, which I almost never read, brought this up as far as
I've been reading it more and more. They're the ones who carried that Alan Dershowitz op-ed last week, too, so they have been creating some news fodder for us. Anyway.